everybody, and welcome back to the stream. It's Saturday, and you know what that means? It's time for the weekend kickoff, our weekly strength and stamina focused bodyweight class, and it is windy. It is crazy out there. I walked outside super briefly and was like, oh, well, I guess it's good that we're working out in our living rooms, huh? Hi, everybody. Y'all made it through Friday the 13th, as did I. So that's a good thing. Again, it's not a superstition that I particularly hold, but just you have a little bit of the sense memory from the Friday the 13th that we had back in March. It was nice to have a reminder that no, usually it's a fine day. But I hope y'all are doing well. You made it through to the weekend, which is good. Anyone on here who went over and watched Desert Bus like I did after the stream yesterday? Although I also played a bunch of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which is now out. That series, I have loved the Assassin's Creed series since the first one came out. But it's unfortunately a series that sort of keeps breaking my heart and then going, well, maybe it'll be okay, and then breaking my heart again. So like, there have been a lot of crap games in that series, and then there've been some absolute gems like Black Flag and Origins, and so I am hoping that Valhalla will be another one like that. And I'm still pretty early into it, but it is quite fun. Nothing wrong with pretending to be a Viking for a little bit, and getting some good historical context for Vikings, confirmation from people I know that the game is actually being fairly accurate with Vikings and who they were, because it was a job title, not race or ethnic group, which I hadn't really thought of, and that was interesting. Good job, Ubisoft, for just really leaning into, all right, we are just providing tours through history now. Useful. It's a useful thing. But yeah, it's hopefully I'm gonna get to play some D&D today, but who knows? It is warm enough outside to do some distanced, masked up D&D, which would be really nice. Because we all get kind of tired of being on video calls all the time, and there's not going to be too much more of the year when sitting outside is even an option. So gotta grab those when they can. But I hope that you have good plans for your weekend. Clearly you're starting it off right if you're here. As a reminder, I am doing a rest week right now because my shoulder has been really killing me. So I will be demonstrating things, but I will not be doing class alongside you in the same way that I usually do, in an attempt to practice what I preach about the importance of rest. It shouldn't impact your experience. It just means that I'll sound a little less out of breath when I'm talking to you during class. But hey, it's our first post-Rocktober program, and that's exciting. Always fun to come back around to some new stuff. Oh my god, I didn't fill the water bottle. Hang on. I was about to start the pre-class checklist, but I'm missing an important component. Thank goodness we're doing class in our living rooms, so we don't need to worry about forgetting water bottle, because our kitchens are generally right there. All right, pre-class checklist. Hey, do you got your water bottle? I do now. Hooray. Making sure to keep us hydrated. Very important. Very important. You got your comfy clothes on. you got your mat or your mat size space. And if you use fitness wearable, now's the time to turn it on to a high intensity interval training setting. I've been using mine even though I haven't been doing a ton of the class, and just sort of amusing myself with how many calories do I burn when I'm doing like the bare minimum that I can do and still teach. And it's not too bad, you know, it's interesting information. That's what I use these things for, you know. I always remind people that they're completely optional. If it is a useful tool for you, if it's useful as motivations, if it's useful for data gathering, then awesome, use it. And I've certainly found mine to be really helpful, or at the very least very interesting. But I turned off all of the like alerts for it a long time ago, because that was just making me super anxious, you know. And I think for some personality types, some people are motivated by those types of reminders. They're like, hey, you know, you haven't burned as many calories as you usually do by this time of the day, kind of a thing. For me, it was just making me stressed out and just putting me in a really bad headspace for working out. So I became immediately happier when I turned off all those alerts on my watch, and just I use it to track, and that's it. And it was an immediate improvement. So always remember, as with anything that we do physically in class, that you can always figure out what are modifications that I can make to something in order to make it healthier for me to do. And that goes for mental health as well as physical health. You know, my mental health immediately improved when I made that modification to how I was using fitness wearables. So keep that in mind, because I'm willing to bet that some people have tried, you know, a wearable or a watch like this and just been like, oh no, that is just too much pressure coming from my wristwatch. And I hear you. I totally hear you. So make sure that you're thinking about that. Make sure you're paying attention to, is this adding value to my life? I'm going to Marie Kondo for a second here, and I've never even watched her, but, you know, is this bringing me joy, or is this bringing me stress? If it's bringing me stress, is it unnecessary stress? Is it stress I have control over? There are so many things that we don't have control over, and man, does that feel bad when we can find the things that we do have control over. Even if they're small things, it can help to ground us. And recognizing that's easier said than done a lot of times, but like something like this, turning off notifications on my watch, was a very, very small thing that I could control, but it had a much bigger than expected impact on my overall health and well-being. So, you know, even if something seems so small as to be inconsequential, make the change, make the modification, and see whether the impact on your life outstrips the perceived insignificance of the thing that you're changing. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't, and that's fine too. Then you haven't really gone out of your way. All right, my friends, we've got that going. We've got everything in place, and now it's time to go through our warm-up. That's not my timer app. Timer app. Hey, here we go. All right, my dears. So everybody heading on over on your mats, on your backs, 1 foot crossed over the opposite knee. We're going to start off with our hip rocks and bridges as soon as that horn goes off. Remembering I'm just demonstrating, so starting with the foot flat on the floor, contract the core so that you can pull the hips off the ground, all right? So there is a bit of momentum generation from pushing the leg off the ground, but not a lot, not from this position. So you really are driving the motion with the core, with those abdominals, contracting them to lift the hip. Because if all I'm doing is pushing my leg off the ground, then I'm just sort of crunching in on my back in a way that's uncomfortable, doesn't really get your hips that far off the floor, and isn't actually useful. So contract the core to lift the hips, then put that foot down, come up onto the ball of the foot, and bridge up like that. And we're just going back and forth between those two positions. And now we will switch sides and do the exact same thing. The only thing that's changed is which foot is crossed over which opposite knee. Oh, I do like doing it on this side though. I've talked about this, how, you know, if depending on your hip flexibility, lifting this leg to do the hip rock may give you a little bit of an increased stretch in your hip socket, because you're bringing this whole apparatus closer to you. And so for me, since this is my stiffer hip, I always feel a little bit of an additional stretch when I swing up to do that, and it's very wonderful. Finding all the little places that we can get little active stretches in. You know, we're not doing any static stretching right now because it's the beginning of class. We're not warmed up, and we want to really get those muscles worked through before we go into static stretching. So any stretching in the warm-up is going to be much more active stretching. All right, and now we're doing our leg sequence. So starting out with Jane Fonda. Remember, we have 3 exercises on this first side before we switch to the second side. So when the timer goes off, don't just roll over and start doing this again. We've got 2 more things to do over here. But check in, how is your straight line of the body doing, okay? We've been really focusing in on that form this week. So check in, how does it look? Are you getting a better sense of how to get into this position without A, having to adjust a ton, or B, having to use a guide to set yourself up? Because that's what we want to go for. You know, we're talking about learning more about our own spatial awareness, about where our body is in the room and how it feels, so that we can just get into positions rather than having to futz around with them. All right, now our second leg exercise. So top foot flat on the floor in front of that bottom knee. We want this knee to be straight up and down, pointing up at the ceiling. Okay, so if I was in a standing position, I would want this knee to be going over the foot, and that's what I want here as well. I don't want it to be caving in. It's less, it's not the worst thing in the world if it's caving in here, just because we're not putting any pressure on the leg. However, this is a good place for us to, in a low stakes environment, start really learning about what it takes to keep our knee in that safe position for squats and things like that. So if your knee's caving in, really engage the muscles in that hip joint and try and pull that knee back into that safe, healthy position, okay? And just get used to that position as much as possible. And now we take that same foot flat on the floor behind the bottom knee, lifting that bottom leg. In terms of the working leg, the foot on the working leg, I don't have strong opinions about how you hold it. I tend to go, you know, between a flexed foot and just a neutral foot. If you want to point the foot while you're doing this lift, that is a-okay as well. As long as the leg is straight and all that musculature is engaged, the foot is not a critical component. So you can, if you're like, oh, I wasn't doing anything specific with my foot, and maybe I should be. Don't worry, you're good. It depends on how much attention I'm paying to it. You know, sometimes I just fall into a flex position out of habit, or sometimes also out of habit, I just don't do anything. All right, so now we are on our second side. Again, back to Jane Fonda. So all of the same things we talked about apply. Trying to keep this nice straight line. Engaging the core muscles is going to help us to not let our hips rock. We want to stay up on that hip, which is, you know, we're literally on the hip bone right now. And obviously that's not a particularly stable place to be balancing. So engaging that core, we've got one hand in front of us for a little bit of added stability, but it's not like I'm holding myself up with this arm, okay? And then just engaging the glute on the working leg helps to pull it into line with the rest of the body. Not pulling the leg backwards actively. That's not what we want to do. But if you've not been engaging that glute, it may feel like you're pulling the leg backwards. I promise you're not, but it may take a little while to get used to. All right, so we're coming back around. On the second side, foot flat on the floor in front of that bottom leg, lifting that bottom leg. And on this side, this is the side where I have to engage a lot more musculature to keep my knee up, but it gets easier every single time, you know? I just have to think about it a lot more deliberately over here, and that's fine. That gives me a better understanding of how all of this apparatus works, where its strengths are, where the opportunities for improvement are, and I'm much more conscious of, okay, cool, my knee is staying in a nice safe position, and it's not starting to cave forward slowly but surely. I've really got the muscles engaged, I've got them working, pulling that knee, keeping it in a nice safe place. All right, and last but not least, our last beach pose, our nice, relaxed, you know, we're super stable here. We're not having to do anything funky to keep our knee safely positioned. We've got this foot flat on the floor, so we're not having to engage the core in the same way. The hip is already slightly rolled back, so we're not worrying about the hips going anywhere. So you can really just chill and dig into, all right, what is that leg doing? How does that feel? And start to get to know all of these components. I like this leg sequence. Everything in this warm-up sequence is designed to build off of what came before. You know, we move through three distinct sections. You know, the kickoff section, and then now we're coming into active stretching for our backs and our hips. So scorpion twists with our forearms planted and swinging one leg and then the other behind, and trying to really get that stretch, that twist into the lower back, going up towards the mid back. And so we move through that active stretching sequence, and then, you know, and it starts on the floor, and then we move up into a standing position, a little more activity, until finally we move into the cardio section of the warm-up. So everything builds off of what came before, and, you know, we're basically at the beginning of this roller coaster ride, right? So we're slowly but surely chug, 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 chug. We're taking our time. We're not trying to rush. We're not trying to push faster than we need to go, so that we can get up here and then really take off for the rest of class. It's not a perfect metaphor, but I think it worked okay. All right, so now we're doing our nice torso rotations. Remember to change directions. I generally will do 2 rotations in one direction and then change and do 2 in the other, because we don't get a second timer for this, so we have to make sure that we're evening ourselves out in this one timer. And remembering that we're generating the movement from our hips. So if my arms weren't even involved, then I would just be going from the hips like this. The arms are just being held in the same position relative to the head the whole time. So you should be able to see those arms out of your peripheral vision the whole time. They shouldn't be moving forward or in front or behind. All right, same thing here. When we start into the squats, those arms are staying put, okay? They are not a moving component of this exercise. And we want to be confident that they're staying where they are so that we can really focus in on that knee form, okay? This is our first squat opportunity in a standing position. So going back to everything we talked about in the leg sequence, making sure those knees are going straight over the feet and that they're doing it the whole time, okay? So sometimes we can come down just fine, but when we start to try and push up, the knees start to try and cave in together. If that's happening, narrow your stance. Try again. Okay, I can maintain that the whole time. So I'm going to do this exercise here until I've built up enough strength that I can widen the stance again and try again. All right, and now moving into our nice hip flexor stretch with the Samson stretches. It's a nice long lunge, straight leg in the back. Just lifting those arms straight up towards the ceiling. We're not trying to reach behind us or anything. And you really are focusing the stretch on the front of the hip flexor right here. Just settle into it just a little bit. It's an active stretch, so we're moving back and forth. We're not, chilling in that stretch. But we also want to make sure part of the thing that really allows us to get at the front of the hip flexor is keeping the pelvic bones facing forward the whole time, not letting them turn out. So make sure you're really focusing on that, not getting any opening of the hips, because you really want to focus the stretch here on the front of the hip flexor. And then we come down into our nice wide turned out squat, and we're doing our shoulder twists, one shoulder at a time. The shoulders are the only things moving. We're not bouncing up and down out of the squat position. And when you bring a shoulder in, make sure that your knee is not trying to follow. It's easier here because we've got our hands on our knees, and so we can lever them outwards. I'm not trying to hold this position by myself, okay? Which I think we are doing later in this class. So you will have to do that at some point. But just make sure that as you're twisting, the only things moving are your shoulders and that twist in the upper back, okay? We've now moved through the entirety of the spine, and on that note, it is time for the cardio portion. So we start here, really relaxed, with jumping jacks, an exercise that everybody knows how to do. Everybody's done jumping jacks at some point, either jokingly or in a PE class or as part of warm-up for team sports. The nice thing about jumping jacks is that it's an exercise that I don't even have to demonstrate it for you. I'm going to, because we're not doing huge jumping jacks. Again, we're still in the warm-up. We're booting up systems right now. So I'm doing small jumps. I'm keeping my elbows bent the whole time, just having my fingers sort of tap above my head. I'm not extending my arms in that classic jumping jack structure. And honestly, even if we were doing bigger jumping jacks, if you have shoulder issues, keep your arms bent, because flinging your arms above your head like that can be really hard, all right? So always looking for those modifications we can make for safety. Now, here we are at our kick-throughs. And again, kick-throughs being one of our most involved warm-up exercises. So I'm kicking my leg across. My shoulder, the supporting shoulder, should be as close to over my wrist as possible. My standing leg should be as close to 90 degrees as possible, with the knee pointing straight up, not caving forward, not letting my butt down towards the ground. And then I come through the center and I set my other arm up so that I can do the same thing. And we just go back and forth. If you're still new to that exercise or still struggling with tying all of the components together, take it slow. Be deliberate in moving from side to side, okay? We always want to focus on the form before we start focusing on trying to speed up. So now we come into our burpees, everybody's favorite. So hands down to the floor, jump back into a plank, but then we're doing a wave push-up, keeping those elbows right by the sides. Jump those feet forward, and a nice big victory clap at the top as you jump up. So this is our final exercise in the warm-up. We're giving it the most energy of anything that we've done, but we're still not going for 100% yet. We're finishing the boot up process. We want to make sure that we have enough energy to get us through the next 45 minutes of class, right? So don't leave all your energy on the mat in the first 15 minutes and then go, well, I don't know that I can get through class now, okay? All right, my dears, now let us sit down or, stand, but relax and grab some water. Okay. A good kickoff. A good kickoff to the morning. I'm preferring this morning class right now because my shoulder's always better in the morning. It tends to increase in discomfort over the course of the day, which I suppose makes sense. But right now, it's feeling pretty good. And I'm still not going to go at 100% because I'm resting, damn it. I want you to know that I understand the frustration with needing to take a rest, particularly when you don't feel like you should have to, okay? We all love to feel powerful. We love to feel like we are achieving something and succeeding at something. And many of us have a fear of interrupted momentum, We haven't really been trained to take rest. And so, we've been raised in a culture, late stage capitalist culture, that's just focused on grind, and doesn't actually teach us that rest is just as important a component. And so we're afraid of stepping back. We're afraid that we'll lose our edge, that we'll lose our momentum, that we won't be able to get going again, all of this stuff. And it's just because we haven't trained ourselves to rest and to take rest as seriously as anything else that we do. So even I still get that, I'm a little frustrated. I really wanted to work out hard this week. But then I take a step back. I remember that my body is desperately giving me information, telling me that I need to take it easy, to give myself a little bit of a rest. And I'm heeding that because I know that in the long run, my momentum will be far less disrupted by a rest week here than it would be by a major exacerbation of my shoulder issues to the point where, I had to do PT or surgery or anything like that, This is going to be far better for my ability to maintain my fitness in the long run. And I want you to always remember that. I have 2 friends who had to get shoulder surgery this year. It's no fun. No fun. I don't want to be the third. All right, my loves. Let's get going. So we are going to do a Tabata right now, a 20-10, so 20 seconds of work, 10 seconds of rest. We're going to have our usual 3 exercises. Well, I suppose it's not necessarily usual. We're going to have 3 exercises. We're going to go through them 3 times each. And those exercises, first one, hey, I told you this would be in it, held sumo squat. So coming down into this wide squat position, my feet are turned out away from each other. I need to make sure that I can hold my knees safely over my feet. So if you're struggling with your feet turned out that far, turn them in a little bit and see if that's easier. And then we're just going to push our forearms together like this, okay? Second exercise, I know you'll be thrilled to see me turning the mat for some shrimpy goodness. All right, shrimpy goodness. So we are on our backs, moving first shoulders, then hips, and we're just moving along our mats. When you get to the end, start going back in the opposite direction. Make sure your core is engaged the whole time, and the movement of the shoulders and the hips is going to dig into those obliques as well. So it's going to be, we're basically starting in a boat rock, which is contracting here in the center of the core, and then as I move, as I need to generate that rotation, the obliques come in and go, oh, all right, I guess I'm participating in this party too, okay? And then our third exercise, Speaking of shoulders, side to side planks. So coming to this front plank position, shoulders directly over the wrists. Let the heels drop down to one side, come up on that arm. Extend the other arm up towards the ceiling. Hold for a second, let the judges see it. Then back through the center and to the other side, okay? So held sumo squat, shrimps, and side to side planks. Those are our exercises. And let me find the right timer and then update the right timer. This is the issue I've been having all week. All right, and I'm getting the timer going, so get ready for those sumo squats. But the issue I've been having all week is, you know, we all got into a groove with those Rocktober programs, right? And I wasn't having to build new work each week, and I wasn't having to worry a ton about the timing. And I was able to, all right, so now you're in that wide held squat. Here we are. I was able to minimize the amount of time I spent demonstrating and discussing the exercises because they were the same ones week over week, so everybody knew what they were about. And this week, I have definitely struggled with my timings. All right, we're coming down and doing some shrimps. I have struggled with my timings because I had gotten used to being able to, you know, just chat a little bit more with you all in the rest portions, and then, you know, and then go, all right, well, it's time to, you know, what's next? Here are the exercises, and I can't do that right now. So I definitely need to get myself back into that mindset. All right, come in here for our side-to-side planks. We are not rushing this, okay? It's not about speed. This is a shoulder strengthening exercise. It's something that I do for my physical therapy for my shoulder. And you want to make sure that it's engaged, it's strong, and it's stable the whole time, okay? Because our shoulders are fiddly beasts. All right, coming back around. So now, round 2 of our nice deep held squat. So check in on those knees, okay? Again, I've engaged all the musculature, particularly at the back of my hip joint, and it's pulling my legs back. It almost feels like it's curving around, twisting around and pulling like a rope, pulling those knees out. So try and feel how that feels and check in on where your knees are, all right? In comparison, the shrimps are easy. Just make sure that you're keeping the distance that your hips move down the mat in line with the distance that your shoulders move, because your shoulders just physiologically can't get as much distance, and when we're just swinging our hips as far as they can go and our shoulders can't keep up, that's how we end up turning ourselves in a circle on the mat, which is not the exercise. All right, back to those side-to-side planks. So remember, you are always going through that front plank. So every time you transition, you are coming through this front plank and then up to here, and then back to that front plank and then up to here. It's not, you don't have to stop in that front plank, but you want to make sure that it's a healthy plank each time. All right, last time through these exercises. So holding, make sure that you're breathing. Remember, we have a tendency to try and hold our breath when we're taking held positions. No. Our muscles are still working their asses off isometrically, and we need to make sure that we are giving them the oxygen that they need to be able to hold that position. It's an intense position. All right, getting back down on our mats for our last time for shrimps. Hiya! You know how much I love a good core exercise. I think I might do a few of these with you just because they're so fun, and you can really feel how it gets at all of the different areas of the core, you know, because we've got a lot going on in the upper and lower abdominals, and then we really start pulling in the inner and outer obliques as we're moving along the mat. So it's just a fun exercise. Every time I say it, I think of Eleanor from The Good Place and her love of shrimps. And it makes me a little happy. So, and we're all about finding the things in our workouts that make us happy, right? That is, I think, a critical component of this whole process. Well done, my dears. I don't know where my timer went, but get back here. Come back here. Ah, that's what happened to you. There we go. Ha! All right. Resting, grabbing some water. This is a great way to wake up. When I was a kid, I was never a morning person. And I think some of that was just the way that my body worked when I was younger. Some of it was, issues with bad mental health when I was younger. But I've become much more enamored of the mornings as a time to really help set up the rest of my day. And that's nice. And you know what? Everybody has different circadian rhythms, and I think that is a big thing. We try and shove everybody into the same box in terms of their circadian rhythms. And I think most things about the human experience are on a spectrum, and that includes when people thrive, when they are best served by being awake and productive, when they're best served by being relaxed and resting, when they're best served by being asleep. And I know it's changed a lot for me over the years, and I'm sure it has for you as well. And that's the thing. We are also not static creatures. The things that served us when we were younger are not necessarily going to be the things that serve us now. And that's great. Isn't it amazing that we get to keep growing and changing over the entire course of our lives? I think that's pretty cool. I recognize that there are plenty of people out there who do not enjoy the process of growing and changing over the long term, but I hope I am never one of them. All right, my loves, let us do our next set. So we're going to do another Tabata, but this time it'll be 30 seconds of work to 10 seconds of rest. We're going to start with the penché, which we have not done in a while, and we're going to be alternating. So I'm going to step forward onto one foot, and I am going to slowly bring my back down in a flat back while bringing my leg up. So I'm going to come down to this T position, then stand, and other side. So I'm trying to create a tabletop as much as possible. Hips pointing towards the floor, back straight and long, leg long behind me, and then just sort of moving that entire shape and switching sides, going back and forth, okay? So we got the penché, then we're coming down to our mats to do a chaturanga to a downward dog. My usual caveat, I am not a yoga instructor, so this is my version. So we start from a plank, start coming down like we're doing a push-up. When you're almost all the way down to the ground, leave those hips down there, extend the arms, and then push back against the hands into a downward dog, then back to that plank, and repeat over and over. And then the third exercise, hey, I was talking about boat rocks. Now we're going to do some boat rocks. So coming up on our tailbones, and we're holding this pike, but we're contracting the core to round the lower back, because we're going to roll back and then up and back and up. And you want to make sure the core is engaged the whole time, because the second you let go of it and the back flattens out, and then you get stuck here, or if you're doing the pike with a flat back, ow, that was just really uncomfortable. So those are our exercises. Penché, then chaturanga to a downward dog, and then our boat rocks. So everybody back to your mats, get that timer fixed and ready, and we will go. My classes are really just a mishmash of terminology, because of course the penché, that's a dance term from my 30 plus years of dance training. Chaturanga is a term that has sort of made its way into my vocabulary from yoga classes. I feel like I should change the name, because I do try to change appropriative names of exercises to something different when I am teaching. So if anybody has any recommendations on that, you know, it's easiest to get my meaning across when I use that term, but it's just as easy to just teach people to understand a new term for that exercise. So any recommendations, pass them my way. All right, and now you're coming in on, speaking of, the chaturanga to downward dog, because here we are. I forgot that we were doing 30 seconds on this interval, so it's lasting a lot longer. So make sure that when you come back to the plank from the downward dog, again, we want to come back to a really nice front plank position, just like we were doing in the side-to-side planks. So coming from here, and then here I am, shoulders directly over wrists, nice straight body, and then going through the exercise, making sure that the shoulders are strong and stable the whole time. All right, heading into the boat rock. This is an exercise that it took me a long time to really feel the utility of, because I wasn't actually engaging my core for it, because you can sort of get away with just chilling and rocking like this, and like, you know, my core has to engage sometimes just as, you know, to keep the motion going, but I wasn't engaging my core the whole time. So I would come out of it and be like, I'm really not feeling anything. So I want you to really focus in those boat rocks on, I am contracting my abdominals and I am keeping them contracted the whole time. I promise it will revolutionize how that exercise feels. Now we're coming back around to our second run of penchés. Again, we're not going for speed, because this is not jump around. There's balance in here. We want to make sure our core is engaged so that we're not falling all over the place. All right, maintaining that tabletop position. So again, a lot of slow and steady exercises today, things that we can really dig into for strength and stamina, rather than, we're not doing anything that's supposed to be really intense and cardio focused. I don't know what that fist pump was, but here we are. Here we are. All right, and now you're doing your second round of chaturanga to downward dog. Make sure those elbows are staying by the sides again, okay? When we do our push-ups, when we do this exercise, we're really focusing the intensity in on the triceps. So don't let those elbows start flaring out, okay? All right, and coming back around for some boat rocks. So how's this feeling? You feel, even just start in a flat back and then actively contract the abdominals. Feel the difference, you know? It feels a little more awkward because we're used to doing that balance with a nice straight back. And here we have to actively curve our lower back so that we can maintain that rocking position. So it may feel a little awkward. I know it does to me sometimes. So just really lean into it, get to know how the exercise is supposed to feel, and recognize that it'll feel a little uncomfortable while you're getting used to it, as most things do. You know, there are plenty of exercises in here that they feel really natural to me now, but it took months, sometimes years for me to get to that place. You know, I've been taking this class well before I started teaching it. I took it for like 3 years before I took over and started teaching. And yeah, there are some exercises that didn't really click for me until like last year or this year, you know? And again, it ties into, sometimes we don't actively feel all of the improvements that our bodies are making with our exercise program, and that can be kind of demoralizing because we like to have evidence that our effort is paying off. It is paying off. It's a slow and steady process, right? We're not in this to get immediate gains. We're all here because we want to live our healthiest lives. We want to be able to do all of the active activities that we want to do. We want to be able to be as mobile as we want to be for as long as we can. And exercise is a really, really great tool in that toolbox. But it does mean that we have to accept the fact that a lot of the improvements that we make, it's going to take a while for us to realize them and to be able to consciously notice them, okay? And that's fine. You know, it really, you want to make a commitment to this process, not because it's giving you immediate, you know, biceps like The Rock and abs like Chris Hemsworth. Sorry, I watch a lot of Marvel movies, and I just watched Fast and Furious 5 the other night, which, oh man, that series, I have such a love for that dumb series. I was introducing it to a very dear friend of mine who has never seen any of the Fast and Furious movies, so I got to experience that with her. Oh man, her face was priceless. Okay, my friends, how are we doing? It is still windy, but beautiful. It's just a beautiful day. It's a beautiful fall day. You know, we got blue sky, a few white clouds over there, lots of wind, and it's just, I love it. I love this time of year. And it's been a really nice fall. We've gotten a lot of nice cool days. We've gotten a little snow, which is very common here in Colorado, so feels nice. And I'm looking forward to winter. All right, so now we are going to do an AMRAP set. Oh my goodness, you get some control. So we are going to do our AMRAP set, 5-minute timer. We have 3 exercises, and you get to determine when you switch from exercise to exercise. It is not me or the timer telling you. It is all on you. Yes. So our exercises for this, we're going to do our side-to-side mat jumps. So this is an exercise where we really need to be aware of where we are in space. So coming to one side of your mat and standing on that same leg. So if I'm on the left side of my mat, I've got my left leg forward. I'm putting all my weight on it, just letting my right leg cross behind. I'm tapping the toes down, but I'm not putting weight on it. I really want to drive the jump. The power for the jump is coming from my front leg. And I jump across to the other side. I can let this hand come down, but again, only for balance, not to put weight on. So tap down and then jump, and we're just going back and forth and back and forth. Second exercise is going to be kick-throughs. We went through those in the warm-up. I'm trusting you to remember all of the form stuff that we talked about. And third exercise is going to be a pulsing front superhero. So we're going to lie flat on our stomachs, legs extended, arms extended, and we're just going to lift arms, legs, chest off the ground, and lower, lift, and lower, lift, and lower, and just keep doing that. All right, so those are our 3. Gonna get the timer going. You're just gonna have one horn in the middle of it to tell you you're halfway through. It doesn't need to change anything about what you're doing. So just get on your mats, and as soon as you hear the horn go, we are starting with our side-to-side mat jumps, kick-throughs, and pulsed front superheroes. So you are off, my friends. And remember, so this is a perpetual motion timer. So at no point do we get to stop and chill and rest. If you're done with one exercise, if you're like, all right, I've done enough of these side-to-side mat jumps, then it's time to get down and immediately start doing your kick-throughs, okay? So make sure that you are minimizing the amount of time it takes you to transition from one exercise to the next. All right, that's the most important part of this timer. It's wonderful that we have control over
how long we stay with any given exercise when we switch to the next one. You still have to do all 3 exercises, okay? Dropping one of the exercises is not an option in this particular timer, but you don't have to stick with it for an extensive period of time. If if you really aren't feeling it, you can do a couple of reps and then move on. My recommendation is try to do at least 5 to 10 reps of each exercise, okay? Just because when we let exercises that we dislike or feel more unstable on sort of get into our heads, then it takes us a lot longer to feel comfortable with them and to really be able to build up improvements in them. And the improvements will come. Some of it is just recognizing what areas you need to work on deliberately, strengthening so that you can do an exercise more effectively. So kick-throughs were one for me where I hated them for so long, and I wasn't really paying attention to why. Well, of course, it was because I didn't have the strength and stability in my shoulders, and I didn't have the stamina to maintain that strength and stability. And so I just felt really awkward at them, and I felt like I was getting worn out on them really quickly. I was becoming really fatigued on them really quickly. After doing, several months of PT exercises, suddenly I came back to kick-throughs, and I was like, oh, this is how they're supposed to feel, So some of it is just making sure you're still doing the exercise. Some of it is figuring out, okay, what is holding me back in this exercise and what can I do to maybe train that specific area so that this exercise becomes easier. But if you just never do the exercise at all, then you're never going to improve on it. And everything that I give you in this class, I promise, has utility, is something that is valuable for you, for your health, for your physical well-being. And I understand disliking exercises, absolutely. And I also know that when we let that get too far into our heads, then even when we are better at the exercise, our brain is still trying to convince us that we need to stop. That happens to me all the time with kick-throughs and mountain climbers. My brain is the thing holding me back now because I spent so much time really disliking those exercises because I didn't feel like I had the shoulder strength. Now I have it. Now I can go for ages. But my brain is still stuck in this previous mode of thinking where it's like, oh, we hate that. We can't do that. And that just becomes another thing that I have to try and work through over the course of my fitness practice. So the more that you can do to minimize outright loathing of different exercises, the more effectively you will be able to build the strength, the power, the speed, the stamina that will help you to feel more confident in them. And I recognize that, the brain is going to feel what it's going to feel, and sometimes we're just too far in. But try and find things that you do enjoy about those exercises that you're not crazy about. Or barring that, really try and take a step back from just, I don't like this, to what could I do to help myself feel more confident in this? And then go after that, and then come back to the exercise and see what difference it makes, okay? So it's, everybody has different motivational approaches. Everybody works better or worse with different styles. Some of us are intrinsically motivated, some of us are extrinsically motivated. Some of us really like having other people that we can, have friendly competitions against. Some of us really need to just focus in on ourselves, and we hate having other people, yelling at us and boot camping at us. And the more that you learn about yourself, about how you are best motivated, about how you enjoy exercise the most, the easier all of this becomes. You basically learn more about yourself. Never stop learning. NSL? Anyway,
yeah, never stop learning. Never lose that curiosity to figure out more about yourself. And then you can use that information to relate better to basically everything from physical exercise to your friendships and relationships to your work, you know. But you have to maintain that curiosity of figuring out, why do I feel this way? Why do I approach things this way? I'm in my mid-30s and I am still learning so many things about myself that have revolutionized how I try and approach the work that I do and approach the people in my life. And it's huge. And it's not, it's not a one and done process. It's a process that I have a feeling will keep going for my entire life. And sometimes that can feel a little tiring. Most of the time, it feels really exciting. Okay, so what we are going to do now, my friends, we haven't done this in so long, I'm so excited. We are going to do 10 minutes of toe squats. You heard it right. Oh my goodness, I know how much you've been missing the really extensive toe squats. Well, my friends, they're back. Yeah. I'm putting all my favorite exercises into this class. All right, so our toe squat form, we take ourselves with our feet about hip width apart, okay, and then show you from the side. We're trying to keep our backs straight up and down as possible, and we start to squat down. Oh, I can't go any farther than this, you say, because of my Achilles. I'm just gonna let my heels come off the ground, come all the way down here, and then stand back up. So my heels are not actively lifting and lowering. They are coming off the floor because they have to if I want to keep going down, and they're just naturally coming back down onto the floor as I stand up. So we are not, I've had students, some of the mistakes I've seen, I've had students who, will fling themselves up onto the balls of their feet and then try and do the squat down. I've had students who get down here and then push their butts back so they can get their heels all the way down and then stand up. The heels are not actively doing anything. They are along for the ride. I'm keeping my back straight up and down the whole time, and that really controls what they can do, okay? And you notice it. If I'm actively lifting and lowering them, then it impacts my ability to keep that nice tall torso. So I'm going to have the timer going, and you're going to do as many as you can. And what the structure is, you can take rests if you need to, but you need to have a consistent number of reps that you're doing each time, okay? So if you start out and you do 25 reps in a row, and then you're like, all right, it's rest time, cool. Now you're gonna be doing 25 reps in a row each time between each rest. If you start out and you're going on, and you're like, wow, I can make it 50, that's awesome. That is awesome. Now you're doing 50 reps each time, all right? And it can be intense. It can be intense. And remember, what happens when we start getting fatigued? We start losing control over our form. So make sure that you're not going quite to failure, because you want to be able to keep doing this the entire time. All right, so everybody back to your mats. And as soon as you hear the horn, we will get started. This is our last exercise for class. So getting started. I'm going to do a few more of these because they're not intensive on my shoulder, although there is the lifting and lowering. But I do love this exercise. It is an exercise that has definitely been one of those ones that after a while I go, oh, this has really helped me in a lot of things. So make sure that you're engaging your core the whole time, all right? Again, if we're trying to keep everything here in that nice straight line, we don't want our torsos roaming around, going in a direction we're not expecting, especially because we're coming down into this balance position, essentially,
the bottom of this squat, we are up on the balls of our feet, and they are having to manage and control all of the weight of our body, which is in a really weird shape, okay? So if I engage my core, that prevents my torso from falling in a weird direction where suddenly my feet lose the ability to manage the balance. Maybe I wrench my knee, maybe I fall over. We don't want any of that. So engaged core while I'm here the whole time, and that way I know where the weight of every part of my body is going to be at every point during the exercise. And that is a hugely important thing, okay? Oh man, this is our last thing for class, my friends, before I send you back out into the wild blue yonder. Well, wild, slightly cloudy yonder. Yeah, it was weird because a few hours ago, there were some really intensive looking stormy clouds, and it's not supposed to storm today as far as I know. It certainly doesn't feel like it outside, but those clouds were they were a little ominous looking, so I keep poking my head out to see how it looks, but it still looks like a beautifully blustery fall day, which is good. I was playing Stardew Valley, and I've made it to my first fall in this current farm, and I've definitely had some beautiful blustery days. This basically has turned into Blanche's video game recommendation string today. I'm playing a couple of games, which is exciting because, you know, there's been a lot going on, obviously. She said in the understatement of the century. It's the kind of thing where when there's too much going on, I struggle with consuming new stories. So reading becomes harder, watching new TV shows or movies becomes harder. I start defaulting to a lot of comfort food programming, and playing video games becomes harder. So it's been really nice in the last week to feel like enough of my brain has opened up that I'm able to play some games again and get some reading in. I am reading currently The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates, which was his first fiction book, and it is absolutely remarkable, which shouldn't surprise me because he's an excellent writer. But you know, excellence in nonfiction writing does not always translate to excellence in fiction writing. It's a whole different animal in terms of world building, in terms of the ways that we use language. But I was very happy to discover that he is just as skilled as a fiction writer as he is as a nonfiction writer. So if you're looking for a new book, I can definitely recommend that one. I can definitely recommend Piranesi, which is the new Susanna Clarke book. And I've never read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which is her only other novel, I believe. And I had never read it, so I knew nothing about her writing style. I had no idea what to expect. And her newest book, it is small, but it is stunning. Just absolutely beautiful, evocative imagery. I blasted through it in a day, and I keep going back and rereading passages because it was just that beautiful. I've been reading a lot of good books recently, which is a nice thing to be able to say. I'm trying to slowly diversify my reading lists. So reading fewer white cis males in favor of women, in favor of BIPOC folks, and you know, just really trying to put a lot of deliberate thought into what stories am I consuming? What mythologies am I consuming? I've got, oh my God, I always invert the title. Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James, which is a remarkable book. It's a much slower read for me, so I'm still making my way through it. But it's remarkable, not only because it's just really well written, but also because the base mythologies that are feeding it are mythologies that I didn't grow up with, and so I don't have as much innate understanding of. And so there's so many layers of discovery involved, which is really remarkable, and not an experience that I've had nearly enough. So very much liking that book. So yeah, there we go. Blanche's book and video game corner. How are you all doing on your toe squats? So we are over halfway through. We've only got about 3 minutes left on this timer, which is super exciting. If you're taking rests, take the opportunity to stretch a little bit while you're resting. You know, we can do that standing quad stretch, pulling the heel into your butt so you get that nice stretch along the top of your quad. Get some calf stretching in. Use a wall. Mine's imaginary, but you get the point. Bring that foot straight back behind you. We want to drive the heel all the way down to the floor. So that's where the wall can come in handy to help give us a little extra force. Okay, making sure you're doing both sides and making sure too that you're not forcing yourself into the position. Slow and steady into the position, because we want to make sure when we're doing stretches, particularly static stretches, that we are not sending signals to the muscles to activate, because when they activate, they try and contract, because that's what our muscle fibers do. They are always trying to contract, and the only reason why sometimes they lengthen or don't go anywhere is dependent on the amount of force being generated by the muscle fiber versus the amount of force being generated by external sources, you know? So if I'm here, I don't want that calf muscle to engage. I don't want it to start contracting. I want to just be able to make my way into that stretch and have it stretch so the muscle, so that I'm not in danger of tearing things, you know, because that can be a huge issue with eccentric muscle actions, which are the lengthening muscle actions. There is some research that says that delayed onset muscle soreness, which is when, you know, you worked out really hard and then 24 to 48 hours later you feel sore everywhere. There's some research that says that instead of that being caused by lactic acid buildups, it's instead caused by micro tears in the muscles. And, you know, this field is, there's so much we don't know. There's so much that we're constantly learning about the human body, but we do know that eccentric muscle actions are the ones that are more likely to lead to micro tears, because you are actively pulling the muscle to do something that it is trying, it's not just not wanting to do, but actively trying to do the opposite. You know, every time I'm lengthening a muscle, that muscle, if it's activated, is actively trying to contract. Okay? So, yeah, getting some nice stretching out, always trying to move slowly into the stretches. Oh my gosh, you guys, guess what's about to happen? Wow, 10 minutes of toe squats. How did that feel? How did that feel? Let me tell you, the most exciting day of my life was the day that I was able to go through an entire 10-minute timer and A, not stop moving, not stop doing my toe squats the entire time, and B, get to over 200 toe squats in 10 minutes. That was super exciting. And it took me a long time to get there. Again, remembering that this is not, nothing about this process gives us instant gratification. But if that's something that you want to work towards, if you want to really up up the number of reps you can do, decrease the amount of rest that you feel like you need to take in those types of sets. Then, start really paying attention to how many reps am I doing? And every time that we come around in class and I'm like, all right, we're doing 10 minutes of toe squats, then go, okay, well, last time I did 35 reps before I needed a rest. This time I'm going to try to do 40 or 45, and just, do that process where you are ramping up the number of reps and ramping down the amount of rest, which are two of the ways that we start to push our performance forward. When we hit those plateau points, and we're like, okay, I don't feel like I'm making any progress in my current iteration, what can I do? Things that you can do include upping the number of reps, decreasing the amount of rest time, upping the number of sets. If you're using weights, obviously upping the amount of weight that you're using. And, obviously, this isn't a one-on-one relationship. If you worked with me as a personal training client, then I would be able to assist you with that. But, since we're in a class situation like this, these are skills that are really important for you to know if that is something that you're interested in. And if it's not, that's totally fine. We get stuck in these unrestricted growth mentalities where we're like, we have to keep improving quarter over quarter, just constant going up. And no, if you've reached a place in your physical fitness and activity levels where you're like, I'm really happy with where I am, and what I want to do now is maintain this, that's awesome. Do that. Don't let anybody tell you that you have to be constantly improving the number of reps and the amount of weight. This is about fitting into your life and helping you to live the healthiest life that you can. All right? And it does not have to come with constant improvements, constant pushing of our performance. And then sometimes you'll be going along, you'll be maintaining your performance level, and you'll get to a point where you're like, I'm ready for a new challenge. Awesome. And then we figure out a challenge. That's the beauty. None of these decisions are set in stone, and none of them are bad decisions as long as we are paying attention to the signals that our bodies and our brains are sending us. Okay? As long as if we start there, again, start with that foundation, and then we're going to be able to figure out how we can best integrate fitness and exercise into our lives on an ongoing basis. And that's the goal. That's what we're here for. That's what I'm here for anyway. All right, I've been chattering on for a while. I need some water, and I bet you do too. Okay, my darlings. What a good class. What a good class. We have made it through another week. As I said in my class announcement tweet today, this was certainly a less dramatic Saturday class than last week's was, but I can't believe, time has no meaning, right? Time has no meaning. I simultaneously can't believe it's been a week and can't believe it's been only a week. But, the main thing that I keep reminding myself is that the work is not over, Thankfully, it seems like even the Republican Party is no longer able to avoid the fact that Joe Biden has absolutely won the election, which is good. Really stressful that was a point of contention in the first place, but it's good. But the work does not end here, I am very glad that we elected Biden-Harris instead of 4 more years of Trump. But they come with their own baggage. They do not have great records on a lot of issues.
And they've already done some signaling that I find concerning. You know, a lot of focusing on how to maintain status quo positions just becomes maintaining injustice. And that is not something that we should ever have allowed, and it's something that we really need to actively push back on. All of us, you know. We can't just sit back and be like, okay, everything's fine. You know, now we can go back to how it was before. Well, before, it was still pretty awful. It's just that a large segment of us, namely white folks, were able to turn a blind eye to how bad it was. And that's not something that we can or should do anymore. You know, we never should have. But if you're hoping to do that after the last 4 years, after seeing the depth and breadth of the injustices being visited on BIPOC folks, on trans folks, on you know, poor people and working poor people, on anyone who is not a 1%er, basically. If you can spend 4 years seeing all of that and then just go back to looking away from it, you can't. And I'm gonna keep yelling about it, and I'm gonna keep pushing myself to be involved, to be more involved in my local elections, to be more involved in activism efforts, to be more involved in donating, you know, time when I can't donate money, and to using my voice and my platform to amplify the voices of marginalized groups who don't usually get nearly enough platform. So, yeah, these are the things I'm thinking about, and I think it is good to have a little extra brain space to be able to sort of sit back and think about them without quite as much of the panic that I was feeling last week. But we cannot afford to lose the drive, all right? The last 4 years, we've seen a lot of unprecedented in my lifetime levels of activism, protests, visibility, people getting out there, and we have to maintain that. We have to ramp it up. We have to keep it going, okay? It doesn't matter who's in the White House. We have to keep it going. So, yeah, there you go. Just some final Saturday morning musings. It seems like the last couple of classes have ended with me talking really intensely about serious topics for 10 or 15 minutes. But I'm gonna let you go enjoy the rest of your Saturday, because I know that I am going to enjoy the rest of my Saturday, and I also need some breakfast, and I bet you do too. So this was the last class of our broadcast week. We start again next week, Tuesday at 5:45 p.m. Mountain Time. Is Perpetual Motion, the class where we never stop moving. I almost forgot what class it was for a second there. Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. is Jump Around, our weekly cardio class. Friday at 6 p.m. is Functional Home Fitness, where we do weight training using objects you can find around the house. And then that'll take us back around to Saturday morning and the weekend kickoff. You can follow me at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All those handles will be in my end card, but they're all variations on Blanche Case Fitness. My YouTube channel is where I upload the VODs for these videos, and where a lot of additional content's going to be going up over the next few months, so definitely head over there and subscribe. If you want to help support me financially in making these streams, I do have a coffee account, Blanche Case Fitness. Donations are always very much appreciated. And if you want to help me keep growing this channel, please do follow. Please tell your friends, tell your loved ones, coworkers, anybody looking for an awesome class. I love doing this, and I can't wait to do more. And I don't always say this, but if you are looking for remote coaching, I'm also a remote personal trainer, a virtual personal trainer. So if that is something, if you like class, but you'd like a little bit more one-on-one work and accountability, you know, I also do that. So reach out to me on that as well. All right, my dears, take a shower, have a good breakfast, keep breathing, keep wearing a mask and washing your hands, keep dismantling white supremacy wherever you find it. And I will see you back here again on Tuesday. Mwah. Have a great day.